This is the most Yu-Gi-Oh set of all time. Why? Time to find out. In the last episode of Duel Sauce Yu-Gi-Oh! History, I talked about the Android format and the Yata format, which culminated to the first ever World Championship in 2003. One of the packs towards the end of the format I specifically mentioned, but didn't go too into it aside from the most impactful cards. I'm talking about this set today because it is my favorite set in the entirety of Yu-Gi-Oh! Since Legend of Blue Eyes and everything modern and beyond. If you didn't watch my Android Yata video, then two things. One, go watch it. And two, that specific set I'm talking about is Pharaonic Guardian. Why is it my favorite set and worth making an entire video about? Let's enter the draw phase and jump right into it. Wait, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, because that helps me upload more videos and know that you like content like this. Sets in Yu-Gi-Oh! Typically have some sort of theme for its card pool. Blue Eyes had normal monsters, Metal Raiders had traps, Spell Ruler had spell cards, and so forth. Other sets like Legacy of Darkness would focus towards the brand new spirit monsters and their unique mechanic. So what was the focus for Pharaonic Guardian? Let's start on the front of the pack. The cover card is Hell Poemer, which fans of the anime might be familiar with as it was a card used by one of the series' antagonists, Merrick Ishtar. His set was filled with torture devices and terrifying monsters, but in other media such as the TCG or video games, he also tends to use other Egyptian-themed cards, which all stems from this set. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a series founded on Egyptian culture and characteristics as seen with its mythos and magical millennium items. Up to this point, most of the cards we've seen have been rather unfocused aside from spirits and tunes. Firegrass, Mr. Volcano, Pot of Greed, Janjo, these are all cards that exist in their own world. Archetypes and similar connecting stories weren't really a thing like it is nowadays with Mech Knights, Cliforts, World Legacy, so on and so on. So when Pharaonic Guardian came out in July 18, 2003, much like Legacy of Darkness, the set had a more focused theme. The set contained many new cards for zombie supports, more powerful flip effect monsters, and the brand new archetype in one of my favorite decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Gravekeepers. These guys and gals' mission is to stop the zombies from arising from their graves, as proven with their powerful field spell, which we'll get to. The heavy themes of Egypt and the undead and other strong, memorable, and recognizable cards, a set that hasn't been matched to this day with its callback to the original manga, is exactly why this is my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Pack of all time. So now let's break down the card list and take a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. Who's that duel monster? It's Cobra Man Sakuzi. What better place to start than the Gravekeepers themselves? The playstyle for this deck has been to essentially block the graveyard from being used. With their powerful card Necro Valley, it stops everything from being moved or changed in the grave, as well as giving Gravekeeper monsters a significant stat boost with 500 attack and defense. This is great because, stat-wise, it boosts the keepers from moderate stats to something to fear. The monsters we would get in the set were Gravekeeper's Assailant, Cannon Holder, Curse, Guard, Spear Soldier, Spy, Vassal, Watcher, and Chief. Each had their own unique utility ranging from Assailant, whom can change battle position upon attack, Spy, whom can flip summon a GK directly from the deck, Spear Soldier, whom can inflict piercing damage, and Guard, who can flip to return a monster on the field back to the hand. Even some of the weaker ones like Curse and Cannon Holder would eventually find their footing in speed duels with the Gravekeeper burn deck. Because of their graveyard protection play, they have remained a force to be reckoned with due to cards like Janjo or Imperial Order shutting down an entire pillar of the game. Necro Valley would find its way into some other decks just for its individual utility. They even had other support in Rite of Spirit, which would allow you to bypass Necro Valley to resurrect the Gravekeeper, and Royal Tribute, which would force both players to send all monsters from their hand to the graveyard. While GKs have never made a gigantic impact to the meta, they certainly haven't been bottom tier, and as long as they keep to their shtick with being a control deck, they'll continue to grow. But what about the zombies they aim to prevent? I'd say the most impactful zombie monster in the set is none other than Spirit Reaper. The monster itself is really weak, but has two key functions. For one, he's indestructible from all attacks. So despite that targeting will instantly kill him, he makes for a great defense that requires more thought than brute force to work around. And two, if he manages to inflict battle damage, you can rip a card out of your opponent's hand. Pyramid Turtle is also introduced here, and when this guy is destroyed by battle, he can special summon any zombie from the deck with 2000 or less defense, which is a large chunk of zombies. Turtle would be a staple for any zombie deck for years to come. And Fushio Richie is a bit of a bizarre card. You must first tribute Great Dizard, but only after Dizard has destroyed not one, not three, but two monsters. And then once he is summoned, he has the effects of being untargetable and can special summon monsters when flipped face up. See, many flip monsters that could reset themselves were introduced in the set, like Swarm of Locusts and Swarm of Scarabs, which would lead to both the Pac-Man deck and flip control. Fushio Richie actually translates to Nosferatu Leech, which can be further translated as Vampire Corpse, fitting his theme of Great Dizard being used to destroy monsters before becoming a bloodlusting zombie. Verona Guardian has a ton of other fantastic monsters from the set, so I'll try and run them down and what they do in an abridged form. New Doria, a Man-Eater bug-like card that simply just needs to be destroyed, not flipped. Don Zalug, a weak monster with two effects that, if it inflicts battle damage, to either discard a random card from your opponent's hand, or send the top two cards from their deck to the graveyard. Guardian Sphinx, a reflipper that returns all monsters your opponent controls to their hand. King Tiger Wangu, which instantly destroys monsters summoned with 1400 or less attack. Lava Golem, a monster who uses two of your opponent's monsters to special summon it via tributing, a very powerful summoning condition. And he also has the power to burn your opponent for 1000 life points during each of your standby phases. And Mystical Knight of Jackal, which might be my favorite individual card from the set for its sick card art and not bad effect. When Jackal destroys an opponent's monster, it gets sent from the graveyard to the top of the deck, which can create certain locks as seen in the Jackal Lock deck. Now it's spell time. Darkroom of Nightmare, a card that inflicts burn damage on top of burn damage, great for burn decks. Terraforming, which adds any field spell from the deck to the hand, a very powerful generic searcher to this day. Book of Moon flips a monster face down, great for all the flip effect monsters, as well as a unique way to take care of opponent's monsters like Spirit Reaper or even Jinzo with his low defense. Reversal Quiz, which exchanges life points if the condition is met, mainly used for Reversal Quiz OTK decks. Question, which makes your opponent guess the bottom monster card of your graveyard to potentially let you summon a monster if they can call it wrong. Metamorphosis, a powerful spell that lets you special summon any fusion monster that matched the level of the tributed monster, a linchpin in Go Control decks of 2005. Reasoning, much like Question, calls your opponent to declare a certain criteria, a monster level in this case, and excavate your deck until you find a monster, and if they call it wrong, then you can special summon that monster. And Mirage of Nightmare, which makes you draw until you have 4 cards in your hand, and then force to discard the same amount you drew during your following standby phase. Unless it happens to get destroyed by then, this is a crazy powerful draw spell, especially if you have the means to get rid of it before its downside comes into play. Of course, there are great traps as well. Ring of Destruction, which in its original errata would destroy an opponent's monster and inflict damage to both players. See, originally, if both players' life points went to 0, you would come out the winner due to the wording that made your opponent take the damage first. Very powerful and a decisive game ender. Nightmare Wheel, another burn card that also prevents a monster from attacking or changing its battle position. Trap Dust Shoot, a trap that activates if your opponent had 4 or more cards in their hand, so you can force not only see their hand, but to return one monster from it back to their deck, assuming they have one. Ordeal of a Traveler, again, much like other decision-making cards, works when your opponent declares an attack, they choose a random card in your hand, and if they call it wrong in terms of monster, spell, and trap, it returns the attacking monster to the hand. It's like a trap version of Guardian Sphinx, and rightfully so considering the art. Reckless Greed. If you're willing to skip your next 2 draw phases, you can draw 2 cards right away. A trap pot of greed in more ways than one. And of course Raigeki Break, which by discarding 1 card, you can destroy 1 card on the field. Great selective removal of the trap variety. As you can probably tell, I've had a blast writing this episode. So much so that I even created my own Pharaonic Guardian format using only the cards from this set. It's definitely more of a fun thing than an actual format that I believe should exist, like a spell ruler format. And surprisingly, there's a lot of variety to be had and makes you appreciate just how much this set gave us. You have offensive cards, defensive, control, monster and back row destruction, unique techs. There's a lot here. With just the card pool, I made a multitude of decks ranging from Gravekeepers to zombies to flip control to Jackalock and a couple more. There are definitely key cards that rise to the top like Book of Moon, Raigeki Break, Ring of Destruction, and Dawn Zalug for their splashability and utility. Man, I remember trying so hard to pull an ultra rare Zalug from this pack and never getting it. The dark beginnings of my love for the Dark Scorpions. This is very much an episode for me and my passion for the aesthetics that made Yu-Gi-Oh! What it was. Unlike nowadays where everything is cybernetic ever since the revolution. But even still, the history for the set is important for the amount of cards it created that stuck to the game for years, from fantastic generic support to superb archetype support. I can still recall getting an old magazine in a grocery store that talked about this set, revealing the cards in their still Japanese forms. I wish I could remember what that magazine was. Pharaonic Guardian created some key components leading into the 2003 Worlds, and yet it still would not be the last set of 2003. That would be 2 more sets, which we'll get to next in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Timeline.